Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your Sun in Aries and your Moon in Capricorn. These are two cardinal signs, and so just by virtue of having your Sun and Moon in cardinal modality, you may be I was going to say a mover and a shaker, somebody who is a doer, somebody who initiates. And Aries for sure is an initiator because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So let me talk about the functions of the sun and moon and when these signs are in those particular planets. The sun represents our individual nature, our aspirational self, which has to do with the goals that we come into this incarnation with, how we choose to shine our individual light in the world. So, whenever you think of the sun, and this is one of the reasons why the sun, to me, is considered the most important influence, is probably because it is about the individual and it really highlights those qualities. Well, Aries, the sun is exalted in the first house that Aries rules because it really goes along with what Aries represents, is the I am essence. And so people with the sun in Aries tend to be very conscious of themselves as individuals. It's a little bit different than somebody with the sun in Aquarius who is trying to be unique, if you will. It's it's more of just kind of a state of being where the person just operates from this idea of, like, it's like putting your individual stamp on things and also being the captain of your own ship versus having to listen to other people tell you what you should be doing or tell you actually what to do, as in a job. So people who have that cardinal modality in prominent places in their astrological chart tend to gravitate towards positions of authority. And by the way, I think that it's important to note that you can be somebody who is a natural leader, and that doesn't mean that you have to be uncooperative. But I have found in my dealings with people who are Aries is that I do feel that there is this tendency not to necessarily easily cooperate with others because probably the Aries person is thinking that that somehow dilutes their sense of autonomy or something, which of course, that is silly, but that's kind of where that's coming from. One of the qualities of Aries is to be very brusque, meaning that the person tends to be very impatient and they don't really want to entertain other people's long-winded, explanations or stories or what have you. They just want to cut to the chase. And this impatient nature can lead to the person coming across as very abrupt and kind of moving on to the next thing. And that's really due to impatience, but sometimes other people kind of take offense to that because they think that the person is just bored with them or is dismissive of them. And in a sense, you could say that the Aries person is bored with them because they're it's not so much them, but just any kind of situation that has gone on for a little bit of time, even just like a brief conversation, the Aries person's ready to move on to the next thing. Now, your rising sign is going to modify that. So whatever that is, it could be, if your rising sign is Taurus, then you might be a little bit more patient. You might be a little bit less likely to always have to do things and you're able to just chill. But I just wanted to mention that because there's a very strong energy that is coming from Aries people. They tend to be very full of energy, and that rubs off on others because it's like enlivening effect, if you will. Some of that is from the fire element, which gives people enthusiasm, and an Aries person may love coaching. Like, I'm talking about sports teams, but, even like a life coach, they would make a great coach because they can encourage people to improve their lives and things of that nature. And with the moon, we're talking about the emotional nature. Well, in Capricorn, it's not going to be all that emotional. You're going to get the emotion more from the sun sign. The water and the fire elements are both emotional. The air and the earth are much more detached, much more emotive. Which one is better? Well, it's not about being better, but sometimes, for instance, the water signs can get bogged down in their emotions. With the fire signs, it's not so much personal emotions, but just that passionate nature that takes on the latest cause. Aries people tend to be the champions of the underdog. They always are looking for a battle to engage in. And hopefully it's something that's productive, like helping others less fortunate rather than picking fights and, trolling and all of that stuff. But when they're at their best, they're brave and they are, they're the warriors, and they help those who are weaker. I'm talking about physically or emotionally. They uphold others. They can be very generous. Capricorn, as the moon sign, can increase the reserved nature. Well, I said increased. I should have said can add a reserved emotional nature that counters the warmth of Aries, being a fire sign. And speaking of generosity of the fire signs like Aries, it's interesting because there's a term that I think is primarily British to mean cheap or stingy, and it's mean. Like if you remember that song by the Beatles, Mean Mr. Mustard, it didn't mean cruel, it meant somebody who was stingy. And this is because Capricorn's motto is, I can serve. So you can see right there that even for that attitude in life, you have like completely different attitudes. You have generosity meeting with extreme frugality. And probably not a coincidence that these two signs square off to each other in astrology. The square is a tense angle, and it can indicate frustration. So there are some of you that will not officially have the square. You'll have to look on your individual charts to see if this is your natal charts to see if this is happening. But one thing I can say is that even if you don't have the square, the fact that they are in these two signs, you will still get this kind of inharmonious, pair of influences. Because the moon is what we need to feel safe in life. And with Capricorn as the ruler of the 10th house in astrology, and the 10th house is career, status, and things like that, a person with the moon in Capricorn is very dependent on success for their emotional sense of well-being. The moon can represent the mother, so the mother might have been very ambitious for you, may have been the kind of mother who um, was trying to make sure you got good grades as a kid because, she was already thinking about like you going to college, you got to get into a good college. And when a child is treated like that, even if they can't articulate it, there's something inside of them that feels like the love that they are receiving, or the approval, if you will, is conditional. And there's incredible pressure that is placed where the child may feel like if they don't succeed, they're not going to be loved. They're going to be maybe even uh, given the cold shoulder or whatever that parent will do. And so the child will do anything to be accepted. Now, I have to point out that this is something that is built into the child, even within themselves, where they feel like this is important in their life, that they succeed. So it's not about blaming the mother for doing that. The moon we could look at as a karmic placement. And so to me, ultimately, karma is something that we have chosen to engage with in terms of the choices we've made for the current lifetime. So any of the major players that we have in our life, I think that we definitely chose those people to work out these things in our life that have carried over from another lifetime. So there really is nobody to blame, ultimately, I feel. It's really about exploring things from a different perspective. And in this perspective, it's like the person having that belief about what success really is. And I feel like Capricorn is a sign, even though it's an earth sign, that can really gain a lot of wisdom, being one of the winter signs, I mean, one of the four last signs of the zodiac, where there's a lot of wisdom that has been gathered and can be utilized in terms of one's spiritual practice, because the moon is also the intuitive part of us too. And so anyway, you may have this nature that feels like an emotional blockage, and certainly squares can indicate emotional blockages. You'll have to look at more of your chart to see if this is really playing itself out, like with Venus in relationships and things like that. But I would just say that the nature of Aries is to be very spontaneous, meaning that the person may, it's like a child, the fire element is a celebration of the inner child. And one of the aspects of children that is most delightful is their ability to live in the moment. And that's how Aries people are. And that's one of the reasons why Aries people, they get bored so quickly, because, the present moment is enticing, but it doesn't take long for it to get a little bit old. And then they're ready to move on to the next thing. So you may have this quality, and yet there is that moon in Capricorn, almost like a wet blanket that is sitting there, and you have this emotional nature that is so dutiful, that is so full of shoulds. You should all over yourself. Capricorn represents the father because of its Saturn rulership. Saturn is the father, and we can just broaden that to say the authority figure. So you're your own authority figure on an emotional level. So everything is filtered through that mentality, if you will. I know this is emotions and not Mercury, but just like that attitude of like, I have to be doing this. Um, why did I do that? I need to be doing this. And it can be a kind of a battle because they are such different energies. They couldn't be more different if they tried. I mean, if your moon sign was Virgo with the sun in Aries, you would have like a very different nature too. But I really feel that with Capricorn, it's quite pronounced because at least with Virgo, that's a mutable sign and it's ruled by Mercury. So there's that, adaptability, that kind of more down to earth quality than I even think Capricorn has sometimes, where it's kind of live and let live and more, to me, because Capricorn is a cardinal sign. Yes, it's an earth sign, but it's so ambitious that it's hard for Capricorn individuals, and I'd even say with the moon sign, to just relax. There's just this very ambitious nature that is also super serious. So that's another way that this can play out. Aries can be, as a fire sign, full of a lot of vim and vigor and very, what can I say? Just enjoying life in the moment, and creative. And the moon in Saturn is that strict parent saying, you're having too much fun. So it's important to note too that you have to look at where are these planets located in your chart. That will give you more information as well. So with this combination in terms of professions that would suit you, I think I mentioned being a life coach, and I really feel that this combination would be quite well suited for that. The reason being that Capricorn is a very resourceful influence, and even in the moon position, this can indicate someone. I think the older I get, the more I think that in a lot of ways it's a blessing to have the moon in earth or air rather than fire or water, because it gives a bit of detachment. And as somebody who has a sun in fire and a moon in, as the sun in Sagittarius and the moon in Virgo, so I have the same set of elements, fire and earth, with sun and moon. I sometimes, would think to myself, oh, I'm not in touch with my emotions enough. When in fact, I can get emotional for sure. But some people, they're just way too easily triggered. They're volatile. And those are words that we could use to describe the Aries energy, to be honest with you. Aries people can be hotheads, but especially if the moon is in Aries. When the sun is in Aries, that doesn't mean that the person might not lose their temper, although I would look at the moon sign for those individuals who are like that. But there's more, it's less personal. You see, the moon is, dealing with our experiences. So there's like that catalog of, grievances that we have that, get triggered when something feels familiar to what we have been through. So this can be helpful for an Aries person to have the moon in Capricorn in that sense. Capricorn is, I think very good at strategizing and maybe problem solving and saying, okay, how can I, deal with this particular situation, and just trying to be proactive instead of just like losing their head. Aries is very fast moving, or what's the word, quick-witted. No, that's not really what I mean, but somebody who can act very um, suddenly, or in a time of crisis. There's like an inherent bravery with the sign of Aries, being ruled by the god of war, I suppose, Mars. And this combination, who knows, this might be the person who joins the military, because there might be this emotional need for kind of that very tight structure that the military, or something to the equivalent. I can't think of offhand a type of career that would provide that. But, if there is anything like that, maybe the Peace Corps, who knows? But that's, I don't know how regimented it is. But that regimentation, the Aries might balk at that. But because the person needs to feel secure emotionally, the Capricorn energy is all about discipline and organization. That's what Saturn is all about. So the person may feel like this is going to benefit them. And so, sometimes you'll have young people, especially those who come from economically disadvantaged communities, who join the military because they feel like that's their best bet for some sort of advancement in their life, and improvement of their economic situation. And their sun sign is naturally geared to be interested in bravery, and even the idea of enemies and things like that can be something that is naturally associated with Aries. And Capricorn rules the government and other sorts of organizations or infrastructures that we have in our societal infrastructures. So yeah, I could see something like that. And any kind of a coach or a team leader, somebody that has to inspire others. It might even be in a corporate setting, perhaps. It depending on other factors, because since the sun, Aries, is near Taurus, you might have a head for figures, and so coupled with that, so in other words, you might have Mercury in Taurus, and maybe you have Mars in Taurus, or something like that, where you might even have your sun in the second house that Taurus rules in astrology. So you might be good with money and with calculation. So being a business owner, being an accountant, or something that you can utilize. I mean, with the moon in Capricorn, it can even be like on an intuitive level. Maybe it's the investment banker, and that Aries energy would love the thrill of, gambling. If you think about a stockbroker, these are gamblers, and sometimes they're high stakes. So Aries loves to live on the edge. Capricorn loves to play it safe and wants to make sure that they lose as little as possible. But in terms of the square, this can be precisely what you feel this sense of blockage or obstacle regarding, because a part of you wants that risk and the other part wants to play it safe. So it's like this impasse. And if you cave give into that need for security, you could end up hating yourself, despising your choices. And of course, you should never, maybe that's a bit strong, but I do feel that Aries people like to feel that they are confident enough to take risks. And it just is not how Capricorn operates. Capricorn is always looking for, what is the greatest likelihood of something succeeding. And Aries is actually a sign that is able to lose and get up and do it again. Even though there's a good amount of ego within Aries, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean just the very pronounced sense of self. The person a balanced Aries, I should say, has the confidence to fail and yet to rise again. And the only problem is if they have that Capricorn influence, they may doubt. It's almost like second guessing yourself, and then the doubt creeps in, and you default to the safe bet. So, in other words, when I was talking about hating yourself, I really meant hating your choices and regretting later on that you didn't do X, Y, or Z, because this combination is super ambitious, no question about it. And it's a very dynamic combination, and the person may have very lofty goals, and yet they somehow at some point get afraid to maybe stick their neck out and take that risk. In terms of love, this combination, I would never think of Capricorns as a sign, and I'm talking about as an archetype, not individual Capricorns, as being romantic. Aries is totally romantic, head over heels, going all out. And the problem with Aries in terms of love is, first of all, confusing lust with love. There's a very strong lusty quality with Aries to begin with, but also there's a rash quality. So those, that combination can lead to somebody wanting to move very quickly when they meet somebody that they're super attracted to. And that could lead to, with the moon in Capricorn, even maybe very quick marriages or something, because Capricorn wants to be traditional and Aries just wants to cut to the chase. So maybe the person thinks it's respectable to get married, but they just met the person a month ago. It's going to be more than that. You have to look at your Mars sign and everything else to see, how you move and behave, and the Venus sign. But there could be a bit of a conflict again with that square type of dynamic of wanting freedom versus wanting family, and feeling like if they get married or move, commit to somebody, that if they have a family, it's going to mean that they lose their freedom. And this is, obviously it's important about who you pick, because that will determine that person's behavior and whether they are, very possessive, very smothering, and it doesn't have to be that way. And if an Aries person takes their time to pick somebody who is right for them, across the board, not just in one area because they like the way that they look or whatever their attraction is. They could, find somebody that is very compatible, that understands their very kind of wild side to themselves. That's actually quite pronounced, being the sun sign. And they might live happily ever after with that person. So anyway, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.